You open the app feeling fine. 15 minutes later, you feel worse about yourself than you did before you picked up your phone. And you're not even sure why. Nothing bad happened. Nobody said anything cruel. You just scrolled. And now there's this slow, quiet feeling sitting in your chest. A kind of heaviness that wasn't there before. You felt that. You know you have. Because almost everyone who uses social media regularly has felt it. That strange sourceless deflation that follows a session of just looking at things. And the official explanation for it, the one everyone gives, is comparison. You saw people doing better than you and you felt bad. Simple. But comparison is only a fraction of what's actually happening. What's actually happening is a coordinated, multi-layered attack on your self-perception that has been running in the background of your life for years. And the reason most people don't see it for what it is because it doesn't feel like an attack. It feels like scrolling. By the end of this video, you will never be able to open the app the same way again. So subscribe, comment down below, and let's begin this journey. Social media sold itself as a mirror. And in the beginning, that's almost what it feels like. You posted photos of your life. Your friends posted photos of theirs. You saw what was actually happening with people you actually knew. It felt like a window into the real world. Messy, unfiltered, human. But then something changed. Slowly at first, then all at once. The mirror got edited, filtered, curated. People started posting not what was happening, but what they wanted to be seen happening. The meals got more elaborate. The bodies got more sculptured. The relationships got more romantic. The success got louder. The failures went invisible. And the platforms rewarded this algorithmically. The more polished the post, the more engagement it got. The more engagement it got, the more it was shown. So everyone, consciously or not, started producing more polished content, more aspirational, more idealized, more distant from actual reality. But here's the critical thing that happened next, because your brain evolved to treat visual social information as real. When your ancestors saw someone in the tribe who was stronger, better fed, more socially connected, that was a genuine signal about reality. Something to learn from, something to respond to. The anxiety it produced was useful. It motivated them to improve their actual situation. But now that same ancient system is receiving signals from a completely fabricated reality. A reality assembled from the best 10 minutes of thousands of people's best days. And reality with no bad lighting, no awkward silence, no difficult mornings, no mundane Tuesdays. And your brain processes it as real every time. No matter how many times you remind yourself it's curated, the intellectual knowledge doesn't override the instinctive response. Therefore, every time you open social media, your brain is measuring your real, unfiltered, messy actual life against a fabricated highlight reel. And it's concluding that you are losing, that you are behind, that something about you is insufficient. Not occasionally, every single session, multiple times a day. And that conclusion, repeated often enough, starts to feel like the truth. Let me be really specific about this, because social media makes you feel bad is something everyone says and nobody actually breaks down. Here are the exact mechanisms, and I want you to notice how many of them you recognize from your own experience. The first one is appearance comparison. And this one is the most obvious, but also the most underestimated. The bodies you see on social media are not representative. They are the genetic outliers, the people with the time and resources to train obsessively, the people using angles and lighting and editing and sometimes surgery to look the way they look. But your brain doesn't process them as outliers. It processes them as a norm, as what people look like, as what you should look like. And the gap between the standard and your actual body, a completely normal, functional, real human body, produces a low-level disgust that never fully goes away. The second one is lifestyle comparison. Other people's lives look like they were designed. Interesting jobs, beautiful homes, meaningful relationships, constant travel, social lives that look effortless and full. But you're only seeing the selected highlights of lives that also contain boring afternoons, difficult relationships, financial stress, and quiet desperation. Exactly like yours. The selection creates the illusion of a life that is categorically better than yours. And the illusion is so constant and so sustained that it starts to feel like evidence. The third one is productivity comparison. Someone your age just launched a company. Someone else published a book. Someone else built an audience of 100,000 people. And all of this lands in your feed while you're lying on your couch on a Wednesday. Therefore, the message your brain receives is everyone is building something and you're doing nothing. Even if you worked all day, even if you're exhausted, the comparison doesn't care about context, it just compares. The fourth one is opinion performance. Social media rewards the loudest, most confident, most extreme versions of every option. Nuance gets ignored, uncertainty gets punished. The people who seem to know exactly what they think about everything, who are never confused, never conflicted, never in the middle, those people get the engagement. But real thinking is almost never that clean. Real thinking is messy and slow and full of doubt. So you watch these confident opinion havers and conclude that something is wrong with you for not being that certain, for still being figuring things out, for not having it all resolved. And the fifth one, the quietest and most damaging, is the metric system. Likes, views, followers, shares. Social media turn human connection into a scoreboard. And once you have a scoreboard, you're optimizing for the score. You start making decisions based on what will perform well rather than what is actually true or meaningful. You start measuring your worth in numbers. And on any given day, when the numbers are low, when the post didn't land, when nobody engaged, when the metrics are down, you feel it in your body as rejection, as evidence of inadequacy, as proof that you're less than. Therefore, social media doesn't just make you feel bad occasionally, it has built an entire architecture of self-measurement into your daily life. Multiple systems are running simultaneously, all comparing you to a fabricated standard and producing the same conclusion: not enough. Here's what chronic, low-level self-hatred actually does to a person. And I want to be careful with that phrase because it sounds dramatic, but I don't know a better word for the combined effect of spending years being told by the system you see every day that you're not enough. The first thing it does is make you smaller. Not physically, in how you move through the world. The chronic not enough feeling makes people risk aware, makes you less likely to try things you might fail at publicly, less likely to share your actual opinions, less likely to pursue things that matter to you. Because if you fail at something that matters, it confirms what the feed has been telling you all along. So people play it safe. They stay in the lane that feels acceptable. They don't start the project. They don't say the thing. They don't take the chance. Not because they're lazy, because the ground under their confidence has been slowly eroded by years of comparison. But the second thing it does is even more insidious. It makes you seek validation from the same place that's destroying you. When you feel bad about yourself, the instinct is to post something, to put something into the world and wait for the response, to get the likes that temporarily fill the gap that the comparison created. And it works briefly. For a few hours, you feel better, seen, validated enough. And then it fades, and then the gap is back, and then the feed is still there. And you scroll again, and the comparison hits again, and not enough feeling returns, and the cycle continues. You're using the source of the wound and the band-aid, and it will never heal that way. It can't, because the platforms that make you feel insufficient and the platform that temporarily makes you feel seen are the same platform. And its business model depends on you needing both. Therefore, the self-hatred social media produces is not a side effect. It is the mechanism. A person who feels good about themselves needs nothing from the platform. A person who feels chronically insufficient keeps coming back, keeps posting, keeps seeking, keeps generating the engagement and the data and the time on the app that the platform sells. Your insecurity is their revenue stream. Sit with that for a second. There's a version of you that never had social media, and I want you to think about that person for a moment. Not in a nostalgic way, just who would you be if your sense of self had developed entirely from your own experiences, your own relationships, your own internal voice, without a continuous external feed on comparison and judgment and performance? What would you look like if the only mirror you had ever looked in was a real one? What opinions would you hold if you had formed them through lived experience and a real conversation, rather than absorbing them from content designed to provoke strong reactions? What would you pursue if you've never been shown 10,000 other people's pursuits and made it feel like yours weren't impressive enough? I'm not saying that person would be perfect or fully formed or without insecurity. Everyone has insecurity. That's human. But there's a difference between natural human insecurity, the kind that makes you grow, and manufactured insecurity, the kind that was designed and installed, the kind that serves someone else's purpose. For a lot of people, social media arrived right in the middle of the most formative period of their lives, teenage years, early 20s, the years when identity is still being built, when you're still figuring out what you think and what you want and who you are. And instead of that process happening organically through experience, through failure, through genuine connection, it happened while constantly watched, measured, and compared. Therefore, some what you think of your insecurities are not yours. They were given to you, installed during a vulnerable period by systems that had every incentive to make you feel insufficient. And you've been carrying them as if they were part of who you are. They're not who you are. They're what was done to you. And that distinction matters more than almost anything else in this video. So what do you actually do? The first thing is the hardest thing. You have to be honest about what the platform is doing to you specifically. Not in general, not theoretically, you. And this means paying attention to how you feel before you open the app and how you feel after. Not just today, for a week. Track it like it matters, because it does. Most people have a vague sense that social media makes them feel worse. But the vague sense are easy to ignore. Specific data about your own emotional state before and after. That's harder to dismiss. Once you see the pattern clearly, the choice to keep repeating it becomes harder to make unconsciously. The second thing is to change the diet before you try to quit entirely, because cold turkey rarely works, and it isn't necessary. But what you consume on these platforms matters enormously. Unfollow or mute every account that constantly makes you feel worse about yourself. Not because these people are bad, because you're choosing what gets access to your brain, and you're allowed to be selective about that. Fill the space with accounts, if you keep the apps, that shows real things. Process, not just product. Struggle, not just success. The boring Tuesday, not justification. Content that makes the world feel more human than less. It exists. You just have to go find it instead of letting the algorithm find it for you. The third thing is to create a version of yourself that exists entirely offline. A project, a practice, a skill, a relationship, something that has nothing to do with how it performs on a platform, something you do purely because you care about it. And the reason this matters is because it builds a part of your identity that is immune to the metric system, a part of you that cannot be liked or followed or shared, a part of you that exists whether anyone sees it or not. The part of you is the most important part, and right now for a lot of people, it's the most neglected part. Therefore, the goal is not to hate social media, it's to stop letting it be the primary place where you form your opinions of yourself, to demote it from the center of your identity to a tool you use sometimes intentionally for specific purposes and then put down. It was never supposed to be a mirror. It was never a fair one. You open the app feeling fine. I started there and I want to end there because that moment, the ordinary, unremarkable moment before you picked up the phone, that's actually the truest version of you. Before the algorithm decided what you should feel about yourself today, that person, the one who existed in the 30 seconds before the scroll, they didn't need fixing, and they still don't. They just got buried under a lot of noise that was specifically designed to make them feel like they did. But you can find them again, not by deleting everything and disappearing, just by slowly, constantly choosing your own assessment of yourself or the platform's assessment. Choosing what you actually think and feel and want or what gets the best response. Choosing real over performance, messy over curated, yours over theirs. Therefore, the most rebellious thing you can do in the current world is to genuinely like yourself. Not perform liking yourself, actually like yourself, with no metric to justify it, with no external validation to support it. Just a quiet, private, unshakable sense that you are enough. They built the entire system on an assumption that you wouldn't get there. Prove them wrong. Tell me in the comments, what app makes you feel the worst about yourself after using it? And do you keep using it anyway? I want to know because I think that answer says something important about all of us.